Welcome back everyone, and it's time to go balls deep! Today we are once again discussing Deku's downfall from being a hero.
No!
Deku's friends are trying to convince him that he shouldn't do everything alone, as he's going down a similar path of All Might and Endeavor by making the same mistakes. For example, All Might didn't stop fighting villains even though he was sick and tired, where eventually Night Eye gave his prophetic vision that he will die a horrible death. And in the case of Endeavor, it was his selfish desire to be number one at all costs, by not relying upon others and hurting his family to achieve his goal. Deku makes similar mistakes by not sleeping or considering his own deteriorating health in his supposed selfless act of wanting to save others. However, this is slapped right back into his face as society has spread rumors that Deku looks like a villain and has multiple quirks like All For One. Deku doesn't believe his friends are strong enough and will be more of a burden to his ultimate goal of defeating All For One, as a part of him has PTSD from the first battle against Shigaraki. Deku witnessed every single person he cares about not stand a chance against Shigaraki. They almost died whilst his quirks were deleted by Aizawa, for God's sake. This overwhelming power has made Deku train One For All extensively, where he can now perform 3 quirks at once, and he can also copy All Might's 100% One For All smash. However, in the inside, Deku knows this is still not enough, as Shigaraki tagged multiple 100% punches with ease in the past. As a result, the idealistic hero Deku once portrayed is now gone due to many factors, such as Deku feeling the pressure of his destiny, as One For All is the only power that can combat All For One. Deku also realized that the society he believed in is very fickle. It's built on fake ideals that he once believed in. That is why his character also parallels Stain in appearance at the moment, since Stain was also a vigilante in the beginning before he realized the truth. Deku's friends think that he shouldn't be alone, as they all should share the burden of his destiny rather than one person taking on so much responsibility. This is a homage to the idea of how All Might inspired a whole generation rather than one person to go plus ultra. In terms of storytelling, if Deku ended up leaving his friends right after obtaining power and multiple quirks, it will only show how he is becoming like the past Endeavor that was completely toxic to his loved ones, or even Bakugo of the past. That is why Bakugo is the one person that understands what Deku is going through, as it reminds him of himself. This is because the power has corrupted Deku's idealistic mind of what it means to be a hero, and how power is the only thing that truly matters in society, which we learn that this philosophy is what All For One, Shigaraki and Redestro were preaching and believed in. Deku is meant to be the antithesis to this ideology rather than joining it, so this arc of him being brought back by his friends is very important, as it provides him much needed character growth to have the reasons as to why he believed in what he did beforehand, rather than coming across like a naive little boy and a fool to the villains that challenged anything he represented as a protagonist. Chapter 321 explores this even further, as it continues the theme with Kirishima admitting he has a lot of things he wants to say to Deku. Now, if you haven't watched our previous chapter analysis, I highly suggest for you to watch it, because each character has different centralized messages for you to understand. We covered the first half in the video displayed to you right now. This is why it's so important for you to hit the notification bell for our channel and like the video, as we cover My Hero Academia on a weekly basis. We'd love for all of us to be on the same page, and it's very important. Thank you guys, it means more than you know.
言葉を知ってるか。さらに向こうへ連れせ。
So what I explained earlier in the video is personified in chapter 321, as his friends are trying to capture him and explain to Deku that he needs help to find All For One by making an alternative plan rather than relying upon himself. Deku could be fulfilling the evil grand scheme in the first place by pushing them away so that they could be picked off one by one. But as I said earlier, Deku's PTSD is triggered, and he remembers that All For One is way too powerful, and he told him before that he's next. He doesn't care about All Might anymore. No. Deku's the #1 person on his mind, and he thought about him all the time in prison. Deku finally admits what he's thinking, that his friends won't be able to keep up even if they try to help, which confirms our analysis from before that he is looking down upon them. Deku goes flying out of the giant ice block Shoto had trapped him in, but Froppy hops on to stop him. She tries to give Deku some of that tongue action, you know what I'm saying? Deku's like, nah bitch, I'm already taking, I don't like you, I like Uraraka. So he does everything he can to dodge her attack and that tongue action.
Yeah, boy.
And with his new broken mind-blowing speed, remember against Lady Nagant, Deku can go at the speed of a bullet, so no one can catch up to him at this point. Suddenly Minata comes out of the woodwork and grabs a hold of Deku with his grape chain move, talking to him about how he never thought his quirk was all that unique, but that's what made him admire Deku. Since in the beginning Deku was covered by a cold sweat and trembling in fear, yet he still led them all into victory every time, implying that Minata believes that Deku is a fantastic leader and that Minata relates to these feelings as he is just like Deku. But by Deku being an inspiration and never backing down despite those same shared feelings, it's what he wants to be like as well. As Minata doesn't possess a great quirk, he's self-projecting and he's a pussy too, right? So he's like, I don't want to be a pussy anymore. I want to drip like you, Deku. I want to be like you.
No fair!
This little speech from Minata makes it more difficult for Deku to keep resisting his friends. You can see it in his face. He doesn't want to run from them, but he sees no other options. So he activates Black Whip, pushing Minata away, as well as his grapes of course, and he apologizes to Minata and activates 45% One for All along with Fajin. But before he can do anything, and you're gonna think, oh, it's over, Deku's future wife shows up and she's like, remember me? Uraraka screams out to Deku, trying to reach out to him, which reminds Deku of her words regarding saving Bakugo back during the hideout raid arc. Back then, they thought rescuing Bakugo would be disrespectful to him, and that by going to do so, it will be selfish act on their part. However, this time it's different. The roles in this case are reversed. If anyone is being the selfish one now, it's Deku, by not allowing his friends to reach out and save him this time. After all, Deku even said back then that it's going above and beyond is what makes a hero. His friends are now going above and beyond for him, but he still ignores it, making him a hypocrite. And now again, all of these foreshadowings and all of these chapters are linked back to one another. For example, this links back to the discussion they all had as friends after the USJ incident and Forest arc, when Froppy opened up about her feelings regarding all their friendships and how she felt left out when they all made a plan together and left the school. Froppy already explained to Deku that she felt worthless and nasty feelings started to well up in her. She confesses that all her friends matter, and it's because of their bond that's why she is not weeping or moping around anymore. She states to Deku that we're scared together, cry together, tremble together, but if he's dead set on becoming a comic book hero, then Class A won't let him live that fantasy alone. They will do it together. That's when Deku in the past agrees with these ideals and says everyone had worked so hard to get things back to how they were before, like always aiming to be heroes, pushing each other to succeed, therefore letting us know how he will be convinced by the others in this new arc to accept their feelings and reality. Otherwise, again, as I mentioned, Deku will just become a hypocrite. I will now pass the video on to Yusuf as he will explain all the other metaphors, parallels and the rest of the chapter. Bye bye.
Okay, so we continue with Deku firing off his attack, sending Uraraka flying away into the distance, when suddenly other classmates arrive riding a wave of ice made by Todoroki, building up momentum to send himself flying after Deku, who's moving at a ridiculous speed thanks to his newly unlocked Fajin quirk. Like guys, remember Deku is actually faster than a bullet, so these guys are sent flying, with Mina's acid being used as a windshield to protect both Todoroki and Bakugo Bakugo as they are sent into the air. Todoroki, using a flash fire heat wave, helps propel them faster as the cold air created by his ice is then used to create a superheated blast of fire. Unfortunately, however, is still not enough. They can't catch up to Deku, which only seems to prove Deku's point regarding them not being able to keep up, both physically and metaphorically speaking. The class began having an inner monologue together, further expanding on the point that they don't want to take Deku down, they don't want to defeat him, they purely want to be there for him. They have witnessed firsthand the damage he is causing himself by forcing the selfish path upon himself, and because of this, they just want to be there by his side, guiding him down the path that leads to all of their goals, as at the end of the day, they are all fighting for the same cause. Bakugo then takes the driving seat, sending off a huge cluster of high-speed explosions, which further propels them through the air, rocketing towards Deku. This scene is opposite of what happened after the war arc. In chapter 303, back then Class A was actually stopping Bakugo from reaching Deku in the hospital for his safety, whereas this time they are actually pushing him towards Deku. Bakugo highlights the desire he has to speak to Deku, to tell him everything he ever wanted, everything he has to say. Bakugo is finally gonna confess his love to Deku. Oh gosh.
Deku! Why do you gotta be such a sussy bucka?
Okay, but seriously, I know some of you guys are thinking that. Don't lie. Anyways, despite how badly Bakugo wants to catch up to Deku and speak with him, he can't right now. And the only one person who has the speed capable of catching up to him is none other than, Ida, the class representative. Funny enough, this kind of does parallel the moment when Bakugo had to be saved by Kirishima and he had to be the one to do it. This time around, it's Ida. He is the key. But the main highlight from all of this is the huge growth that Bakugo has gone through. In the beginning of Bakugo's journey, he went about doing things alone and saw depending on others as a weakness. However, the key moment that pushed Bakugo to change was when he was kidnapped by the League of Villains. Feeling worthless himself, he needed saving by his classmates. All Might was also forced to fight All for One, where it became the end to his career as a pro hero. This left a heavy burden on Bakugo's shoulder, which he then confronted Deku about, fighting him to settle his feelings. But in the end, he had to accept his own weaknesses. Ultimately, he was able to grow from this with the help of Deku. Bakugo started to acknowledge that strength in relying on others to compensate for weakness. No one is gonna be perfect in every area, rather there will be someone good at something and not so good at some other things. This is when teamwork is so important. Bakugo, being so introspective, understood he couldn't catch up to Deku. Leaving his pride, he trusted Ida to be the one to catch him. He accepted that Deku was always ahead of him. Because of that, he will always continue to challenge Deku. Bakugo's mindset and understanding of a hero has evolved, and now, unlike Deku, Bakugo trusts his friends and their capabilities of filling the gap when needed. Whereas Deku earlier stated that everyone can't even keep up and he has to do this alone. Deku, due to his fear, he fell into distrusting his classmates' abilities and started falling into the same trap Bakugo once did. And as we said so many times, Bakugo is the best person to give a speech no jutsu to Deku so he can see what he's becoming. Like even Shoto mentioning that this current state could be All for One's plan is very logical, which would have convinced Deku, who is normally level-headed. However, Deku needs to be beaten down and shown that his friends can stop him and aren't useless, snapping him back into reality. Come on, realistically, the fight against All for One isn't going to be a solo hero going head to toe. It was always about teamwork. Throughout the series, Deku was saving everyone else, either from physical threats or mental burdens and subjugation. His classmates in a way were saved or inspired by Deku to become who they are now, and this time around it's their turn to save Deku from his mental burden. This chapter ends with the second user of One for All explaining that to complete Deku at his current stage, he needs people who are willing to run alongside him with the same will and the same pace. This comment by the second user links back to the conversation between the Vestiges back in chapter 118, whereas the second believes that Deku is choosing the right path as inaction is not an option. However, from this chapter, what the second was trying to say is that Deku needs his friends to bolster him to continue moving forwards. The last page shows either reaching out, grabbing Deku's hands, saying Ignium is a hero who will run anywhere to grab the hands of a lost child, reiterating that Deku is actually a lost child and is in need of saving just like the people he once saved. This is a parallel to the moment when Deku saved Eri by grabbing onto her hands whilst mid-air. This also, funny enough links back to the entire cycle, as the second user also reached his hands to the first user Yoichi, which kickstarted One for All's destiny. And characters from the past like Shigaraki, Darby, even Nagant needed that hand reached out to them but were not given it, leading them to fall helpless into despair. In a weird way, Deku's past self saved his current self, as this moment could have only happened due to the inspiration Deku had. Ida even showcases this by repeating what Deku once told him when Ida went after Stain. Sticking your nose into other people's business is what makes a true hero. This chapter honestly was so emotional, and I can't wait for it to be animated. Deku, worn out and once stopped, will eventually have a one-to-one talk with Bakugo, and that conversation will be a pushing force, pulling Deku back into being the hero he always was. Let us know what you guys think. I know there was a lot of people that actually wanted Deku to go into this dark route and become some sort of a badass solo hero, but personally I kind of prefer the Nakama side to things. Anyway guys, that's it for this video. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, ding the notification bell, and until then we'll catch you lot next time.